What's up, people? This is the Bleav in Saints podcast, and I am Mario Jerez, Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints, native New Orleanian. She is my co-host, Erin Summers, season reporter and analyst covering the Saints and the NFL as a whole. And today we are very excited to talk to our next guest. He is a football analyst at CBS Sports HQ, also a former Louisiana Ragin' Cajun running back, also an author, also a motivational speaker, amongst other things. He is Emory Hunt. Thanks for the time today, man. How are you?
Doing fine, man. Appreciate y'all bringing me on.
Yes, sir. And I'm a fan, man. I've hosted radio shows, as you know, and I've seen a lot of your videos covering the Sun Belt, covering the American, a lot of different college football games. So I know you know a lot about this rookie class, which we'll get into here with the Saints. And I know you put together an extensive scouting report on the draft, and you had a lot of knowledge on not just these rookies, but all of the new rookies coming into the NFL. So very much looking forward to this conversation. But before we get into any of that and these specific first year Saints players, you spent a lot of time grinding, looking at all these tapes on these different prospects. And now that they're actually on NFL rosters, going through OTAs, becoming professionals, how excited are you as we're finally getting close to the season and you'll finally get to watch these guys play as professionals?
Very much excited because it's two parts. One, you want to, see how what they've done at the collegiate level translates to the NFL level. And two, selfishly, you want to see if you were right. And but outside of that, the number one is the biggest thing. You want to see how these guys translate, what works, what doesn't work. Because for me, and just to be completely honest and transparent, because I cover the Giants and Jets a lot of always at practice and at camps and mini camps and games, and you're like, okay, you're noticing how the team plays, but you're also noticing what works at the NFL level, and it helps make you a better talent evaluator on the collegiate side of things. To where I'm at all of these all-star games, you could almost instantly see, okay, this guy has a pro body type, that guy has a pro body type. That's not going to work in the NFL. That might work in the CFL. That's probably an arena football type of talent. So you see that all by you being around the NFL game up close and personal. And so when you watch these guys go from rookies to pros, it's always cool to see how quickly they translate, what translates, and how they get acclimated to the pro game.
With your evaluation and going to all of these different the Senior Bowl and events like that, seeing these rookies in action, which Saints rookie do you think has the most upside and ability to play and be a big time impact player this year?
I really truly believe Aaron. I know people knock him because of his age, but I really like what I've seen from Bryce Lance, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State. This is someone, when you get these big, tall wide receivers, everyone just assumes they just are a straight vertical threat, go play above the rim, win at the highest point, just do all the big wide receiver things. But Lance was someone, and I cover a lot of FCS football. Routinely, we saw him catch a short pass and take it a long way. And I think that's where, he's underrated in terms of where he went in the draft, where he went to, in conjunction to what the Saints already have on the roster. Obviously, you got the my number one X receiver in a guy in Jordyn Tyson.
Mhm.
So that's the guy that's going to draw the attention. But I feel like folks will underestimate how good of a receiver Bryce Lance is. Now, I think that right there was one of the true steals of this draft, outside of them getting, my number two nose tackle in Christen Miller out of Georgia. I thought that was the guy that had a chance to go in the first round. And the Saints get great help right there on the interior. And I feel like he has a chance to really make a significant impact on the defensive side as a rookie.
I'm really glad to hear you say that, man, because this is a player I'm starting to get really excited about. Because, as you said, small school, so maybe doesn't get the necessary media coverage, but his measurables, the 4.3 speed, his size being 6'2", and just the volume of his stats, man. Like you said, that's a school that didn't throw the ball very much, but he was still putting up 1,000-yard seasons like it was nothing. And as a whole, the Saints were really aggressive in addressing wide receiver. And you went into it a little bit there, but what's your thought on that? What are your thoughts on that position room as a whole, adding a Tyson, adding a Lance to what you already have with Chris Olave and some of the more veteran pieces on that in that room?
Well, that's the group that got significantly improved in the draft, because you also have to add in Oscar Delp, the
Mhm.
tight end from Georgia. And when you look at that the receiving core now, which is wide receivers and tight ends, you have to be super excited about what they potentially bring to the table. And now you create matchup problems across the board because just like I spoke about Bryce Lance being a bigger body wide receiver, I feel like he has the ability to play inside or outside, similar to Jordyn Tyson. You can kind of put him anywhere, just like you can with Olave. So now it really becomes a game day matchup nightmare for an opposing defense to say, we have outside corners, guys that do it well on the boundary, but man, their number one receiver is playing inside. We don't have a guy that can cover. We don't want to put our boundary corner in a disadvantage playing inside. And now you put a lesser corner on the outside versus a guy that can win outside in one of the other two options. Then when you start to factor in the tight ends, you're like, wow, they really now put you in the bind because the Saints can go out there with three tight ends in Johnson, Noah Fant, who I like a lot, and also, Oscar Delp. And teams have to now designate, okay, do we put a third safety out there? Because if so, now the Saints just going to run the football. Or do you keep a linebacker out there and now you just created another mismatch for the defense because their linebacker won't be able to cover their tight end. And so I feel like the Saints really got better around the quarterback because of what they did in the draft and also free agency with getting Noah Fant.
Yeah, they've talked a lot about the various personnel groupings that we're going to see this year and how much more versatile this offense could be. How do the running backs factor into that? I mean, you're a former running back. There's still the big question. Alvin Kamara showed up last week. Is he going to be factored in as well? So how do you think things stand there?
I actually love the running back room
Mhm.
now that Kamara is there. And I think, even if you take him out of the equation, you still have Devin Neal, who I liked a lot as a prospect coming out of Kansas. You still have Keandre Miller, who I liked a lot coming out as a prospect. Even CJ
Mm.
Donaldson, the undrafted rookie free agent. I thought he was going to be the next big thing when he was at West Virginia his freshman year. And so, but he's a very good back, kind of like a closer. And so when you now add Travis Achan to the mix, I thought that was one of the more underrated acquisitions because I
Yeah.
did this thing on CBS Sports where we talked about the Jags and the AFC South. I was like, man, honestly, the Jags got weaker at running back because you lose a game breaker in
Mhm.
Achane. I think that was the reason why their offense was really going because you had to be honest about how you're getting run fits and how you're pursuing the run because you have a guy that can really hit the home run. And so now when you put him in New Orleans indoors on turf, as a guy that can, go from 0 to 60, kind of really opens up your offense because it doesn't have to be 25 carries. It could be a screen pass. It could be a sprint draw, something that you want to get the ball in his hands quickly, and he attacks. So the running back room with Kamara is great. Even without Kamara is very good. So that's why you see a lot of people probably nationally excited about the Saints potentially doing some good things this year within that division because they're easy buttons everywhere for Tyler Shough.
Yeah, and talking more about your former position, man, I thought Estime showed some good stuff too down the stretch of the season. Like you potentially had some depth there, but having the Alvin Kamara conversation specifically, because we've been talking so much about his contract situation, his kind of state with the team right now. But in terms of just his game, how would you evaluate the season that he had last year? Because statistically, the worst year of his career. But I think when you contextualize it, if you, like you said, kind of divvy up the carries in the backfield, if you give him a better offensive line, if you give him a better Tyler Shough, maybe it'll be a smaller volume. But I think Alvin Kamara could still be very effective. And I think the Saints are definitely a better football team with him on the team in 2026. So that being said, how do you evaluate Alvin Kamara's game going into the 2026 season? And whether it's with the Saints or with another team, how much good football do you think he has left?
You want to see him get back to what truly made him a difference maker. He breaks a lot of tackles. And I felt like he didn't break a lot of tackles last year. Now, granted, that could be age, could be some injury we didn't know about or whatnot. But I want to see him, get back to that because I truly feel like his value on this particular roster is going to be near and around the goal line because he's a very good inside runner. He's very good at finding the goal line and finding the pylon, and that could be his value. That could be his asset to this particular team in 2026. Outside of that, I think he's going to be seen as, a RB2 type guy, a guy that you can kind of use as a compliment. If you have a young back, you bring him as a guy that can kind of steal a couple carries. Think in terms of what the Houston Texans were trying to do last year, where they had the young back in Woody Marks, but you also had the veteran in Nick Chubb that can come in and get some carries. They're going to try to recreate that this year with a younger back in David Montgomery. But I could see Alvin Kamara's role being just that, being the guy that can come in and be an RB2 to someone's young RB1, or be a situational short yardage goal line. And Kamara is still good as a receiver, so that asset can't be understated. He never lost his hand, so even in situational football, he still has value. And I like the fact. I think this is the most under-discussed part of the whole thing is he actually wants to be in New Orleans. The whole time, he never requested a trade.
Yeah.
He wanted to be here. He was acting as if he was always going to be on the team, and that says something in this era of free movement in both college and the program. This guy actually wants to be here. And Saints fans, they definitely jive with those that want to be a part of the culture, want to be a part of the city, and that's Alvin Kamara.
When you look at Tyler Shough and his ability, I mean, he used his legs last year. Do you think that they're going to try to shy away from that and his mobility and keep him more in the pocket this year? Or are they going to continue to utilize him in that way?
You have to keep doing what made you attracted to the prospect. Like, you can't go and then change his game if that's what made him like you or you
Mhm.
like him, right? And we've seen this happen time and time again with guys that have mobility. They want to prove they can just do the one thing that everybody thinks you have to do, right? I can play from the pocket, cool, but you're a dual threat. Utilize that. Now, because of his age and injury history, you may not call as many design QB runs, but you can still allow him the freedom to say, hey, if you don't see it, don't hesitate to take off and run. I think that's the asset that you want to encourage him to do. Now, again, calling design runs, I think the best, and I've always felt like this, regardless of the player or the quarterback, the best threat is the threat to run.
Mm.
And instead of, like, you don't want to call design run plays for the Lamar Jacksons. What makes Lamar Jackson dangerous is when it's unscripted and he breaks camp, and now it's a free for all, and you have to try to corral them. That's where you have the advantage. But when you call design run plays, you kind of limit the ability a little bit. So I would hope that they minimize the QB powers. You have backs for that now that can go in wildcat, and you also have the ability to just allow him, if he doesn't see it, go get those cheap 10 to 12 yards, get down and live to play another down.
And the continuity too, Emory, that's huge. Look no further than the team you're covering right now with the New York Giants. Jackson Dart immediately has to work with a new head coach into his second season, but Kellen Moore going into his second year with kind of his guy at quarterback. That being said, what are your early impressions of the second year Saints head coach coming in here with higher expectations now in year two? You have that continuity. You're hopefully going to have another rookie class that's ready to contribute immediately. But so far, what have you seen from Kellen Moore in New Orleans?
I like how it sort of started to click for him on the back end of the roster, or the back end of the season last year, where he was calling a better game. He had better situational awareness of when to be aggressive, when not to be aggressive. And I think the way they finished the season kind of carries over into the draft, and now carries into these the 7-on-7 season, as we call it, before they get into training camp. So I'm excited about what he could potentially do. Health is going to be the biggest key. If the offensive line can stay healthy and stay intact, I know that's a big ask for the full season, but I think
Mm.
that's a situation where he could then continue to build on what he did the back end of last year. And there was a lot of great momentum, a lot of good vibes. They won more games than they lost. And I feel like when you add more talent, defense got better toward the back end, which explains how they won more games. And I truly believe if he can continue to, foster that type of momentum and that type of ability he had to really see the game, not from a offensive coordinator perspective, but from a head coach perspective, I think that in line with the talent that they've added should yield better results.
Well, last year they won the best draft class award. So how would you rank this draft class in comparison to that? And I mean, it seems like they hit another home run.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that as we are watching the draft, it was like midday 3, and you see the picks fly off the board. I'm like, man, that's a good pick. Wow,
Mm,
that's a really good pick. I didn't really see any team that had a quote unquote bad draft. Now it starts in college because I feel like when we are seeing what we've seen the last 2 years, what we're getting is a more mature prospect.
mm,
So we've seen guys play a lot of good football, so they're more apt to hit the ground running. The Saints did a great job of just taking really good football players last year and this year. So I think they did a good job. Even when and I always include the undrafted rookie free agents in a team's draft class
sure.
because the Saints have a history of having guys that can step in and play well as undrafted rookies. The Rams do a good job with that, which is how they've been able to get away from, you know, uh,
Mhm,
not really having all these first round picks as of late, right? So I think the Saints did a great job acquiring talent. We've seen multiple times, well, let's say the last 2 years, multiple undrafted free agents have impact. So combining that class with this class, I just brought up CJ Donaldson as one example. So I think the Saints draft class is another A+. I would say this one maybe on par with last year in terms of where I gave those guys grades. So I feel like they both got A's for back-to-back draft class. I really am impressed with how they were able to, find high-end starters, but good
mhm,
quality depth. The depth comes in the secondary. When you bring in
yeah,
Lorenzo Styles, kind of, he's a versatile piece, but can help you out on special teams. You talk about a TJ Hall, a solid player. How can he fit
mhm,
in core special teamers? And so, but they've still found frontline starters. And I
mm.
think this is how you look at that draft class. Say, wow, they did really really good job.
I think you touched on it at the end there, man. Frontline starters. And let's be honest, you know this better than anybody. The Saints prior to the last year drafts were not getting that. You were getting too many Marcus Davenports and Trevor Pennings of the world, right? But now this front office, I think, has inspired a lot more confidence from the fan base because these guys have come in and been immediately ready to play. That being said, you touched on a couple of the defensive guys there. The Saints clearly addressed offense a lot more in this draft than defense, at least in the beginning. But in terms of the guys that they did draft on that side of the football, Christen Miller, Lorenzo Styles, TJ Hall, as a rookie out of those guys, who do you think contributes the most in 2026?
Miller. And I've said this I've been on record for years saying, I have jokingly talk about, um, on offense, big tackle propaganda. How everybody just focus on you need a left tackle, but really offense is one guard, center, guard. And the closer you are, your battery has to be good in football. So that center, quarterback, running back, nose tackle, Mike backer, free safety. If you are good down your battery, you're going to be a good football team. Period. Everything else outside of that is cosmetic. And so Miller having the presence he had at Georgia on the interior, that frees up opportunity for guys to, you have a question about, well, can the Saints replicate what they did last year, rushing the passer? Chase Young in particular,
Mhm,
having his best season. Can Granderson get it done? How can they generate, pass rush? Well, if you're occupying double teams on the interior, you better win your one-on-ones because you're gonna have more opportunities to get one-on-one pass rush attempts because you have a guy in the middle that can be a gap occupier, a block occupier, and it frees up those opportunities. I think that's why you saw more guards and going round one. You saw a couple of nose tackle. We saw a nose tackle. I think he's a defense tackle, but I'm talking about Caleb Banks
mhm,
that went to the Vikings. But Miller is one of those guys too. Um, I mean, hell, the Vikings doubled down. They got Banks, and then they drafted Big Citrus and Dominic Orange in round 3. So it shows you the importance. And I feel like Miller, because of the position he's playing, where they drafted him and what the need is up front for New Orleans, man, can you imagine him next to Brian Bresee and, just how that opens things up for Bresee, who's quicker, a little bit more apt to be disruptive, post line of scrimmage, while Miller is more
yeah.
apt to be disruptive at line of scrimmage. I think that's going to be a good fit.
I'm excited to see Miller because obviously right now in 7-on-7 periods,
Right.
you don't see the lineman as much. We haven't seen him yet at all because he's dealing with an injury, but he spoke so much about the physicality that he likes in the game and just really beating the person in front of you. And I think that you need that in a Brandon Staley system for sure. Looking around the NFC South, what are your predictions on how things are going to shake out and who can take or make the biggest leap?
Listen, I would say we saw what 8-9 win the division last year. I
Hmm.
really believe it'll be one game that separates the winner and everybody else. I love that everybody else got better. I feel like Tampa defensively should be better. I love what they were able to add with Ruben Bain. Even offensively, when we look at quarterbacks, I don't know why Baker gets a bad rep. You know,
Hmm.
4 weeks into the season, we were talking about raising my hand like, "Oh, that's your MVP right there," right? Like he's balling, and so Baker gives him a chance offensively, and their running back room looks really good too. And we talked about the draft and how they added those wide receivers. The Panthers add another big time wide receiver,
Yeah.
and their offense looks good. They're like the Saints in terms of how they close out the season with a youthful team, and that momentum is carrying them to they could really break through. The Falcons have talent on both sides of the ball. You just want to know now um, if Kevin Stefanski can learn from the mistakes he made in Cleveland in terms of being hands off on the offense and allowing the offensive coordinator to have the offense and you just coach the entire team. You coach situations. But the Falcons have a lot of good talent too. So I can see this one coming down to the wire, whether it's Tampa 1, Saints 2, Panthers 2, Saints 1. It's truly up in the air. So I will go with the safe route. And I would say Tampa because I trust Baker more than every other quarterback in the division. So that's how I would rank it, although it's going to be close.
That's why I love talking to national guys. I'm sure you've seen the meme. Like every team in the division is the same thing. Like we're the best. We should have a really good
Mhm.
chance to win this thing. But you can make an argument for every team, like you said. And I know you're covering the Giants presently. You're at their mandatory mini camp this week, and it's interesting with Tyler Shough and Jackson Dart both going into their second year. It's kind of built like a quasi rivalry on social media with these two fan bases. The Giants are going to say Jackson Dart's the better player. The Saints are going to say Tyler Shuck's the better player. But as we talk about that week 6 matchup a little bit, how would you compare both of those guys going into their second season? And if you were trying to kind of moderate some of those Twitter arguments, who would you argue is in better shape going into their second year into the NFL?
Well, that's a great question because if you look at who's in better shape, you have to look at what's around them.
Yeah.
And if I look at what I expect this Giants defense to look like, Dart has a better defensive setup that can give him more opportunities with the football. However, if I look at the Saints from an offensive perspective, like if they have to score, they should be able to score because the Saints have a better running back room, in my opinion. Um, on paper, I feel like they have a better receiving core. And when I say receiving core, I'm talking tight ends and wide receivers. The Giants have some good tight ends. Receivers a little bit in flux right now because you don't know what you're going to get from Malik Neighbors. Odell Beckham and Juju Smith-Schuster are two vets that were signed that kind of help raise the floor. You like some of the young pieces that they have. Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame, the big body wide receiver, very much like Marcus Colston in that regard. He had a couple of big time grabs yesterday at mandatory minicamp. So there are some questions there. Offensive line, I would say it's a wash because if healthy, the Saints have a solid offensive line. They just got to stay healthy. The Giants the same way. Solid offensive line, if they can stay healthy. So I would lean more to Dart because of the defense. But man, as an offensive guy, you got to score to win. You know what? I could also even add the Saints kicking situation. The Giants are in dire need of a kicker. There's gonna be a revolving door in East Rutherford all throughout this camp. There's already been one. They already released a kicker. They're trying to find who can make kicks in this swirling winds here in Jersey. And so Saints kicking indoors have that bit of an advantage, but you have an elite punter in Stout for the Giants that is a tremendous weapon. So defensively, I lean Dart. Offensive weaponry, I would lean Shough.
I think that's fair. The Saints did upgrade their punter situation. They get Ryan Wright, and so I think that's going to help some things. He played at Tulane, so he's a native New Orleanian, so to speak, as are you. So I know you're a national guy now, but you have to have been a Saints fan growing up.
I was I was the Saints fan. I was a diehard Saints fan, and that's why it's so funny. And I call them these since 2006 Saints fans. Because, as the lone Saints fan growing up, having to listen to the radio because the games are blacked out, and hoping that we get a game break to see what happened because Jim Henderson's going crazy on the radio. Like, I need to see that touchdown that, Andre Hastings scored, or, what I'm saying? So, or Eric Martin scored, right? So, and it's, so you look on Facebook and you see friends, childhood friends, classmates, that I know you were a Bills fan. I know you were a Washington Commanders. I knew you were a 49ers, Steelers, Cowboys fan. Now you sitting there with your face painted and talk about who that, who this. I'm like, this is amazing, right? And so now people forget I was a Saints fan because I was the only one repping the Saints growing up because I was the only one that liked it because they wasn't winning as consistently. So yes, I'm off my little soapbox because I've seen the transition since 2006 to where games are blacked out. There's tailgate areas now. Saints fans are vehemently defending the Saints. I was like, this is fascinating. I never thought I'd see the day that this would happen.
I so respect that, man. I respect the fact that you kind of kept your allegiance with the Saints because, like, the Little Waynes of the world, like so many people just start rooting for another team because they didn't have that team success. And I'll be honest with you, I'm 31 years old. Like, most of my life has been good football. I remember the Aaron Brooks days, the Jim Haslett days. That's as bad as it got for me. So I know that I've had it pretty good as a Saints fan. That being said, being a native of New Orleans, that there's a lot of excitement around this team, and it's new excitement. They're not trying to recreate the Sean Payton era or the Drew Brees era. You have a young head coach, a young quarterback that this city believes in. That being said, how important do you think it is to just make the playoffs for the Saints this season? I think not just getting the excitement and keeping it going, but having the reps in the postseason for such a young team that's going to hopefully be back there in the future. I think that would be really big to establish here in Kellen Moore and Tyler Shough's second season. I think it would be huge. How big do you think that would be? And how good of a chance do you think the Saints have to break back into the postseason this year for the first time since 2020? It's been a minute down here in New Orleans.
The postseason, making the postseason would be huge. And it would have been well earned. And the beauty about being on a national scale, I get to zoom out and cover the entire 32. And on top of that, digging into the evaluation scouting process like I do, I have a good foundational knowledge of what's on these rosters. So I know how good these teams are around the league. Funny quick story. I remember being at Giants camp. I want to say this was 2023. So last year was the 2025 season, right? So this was 2024 season. And I'm sitting there and Madeline Burke, who's now with ESPN, she was covering the Giants. Erin, you know Madeline. And so we're standing there and she was like, Emory, what you think about this team? And this is day 2 of training camp. I was like, this team ain't winning no more than 2 games. And she was like, there's no way. They got this, they got that. I was like Madeline, I'm telling you. And lo and behold, they got their second win. I want to say like week 14 or something crazy like that, right? I think they won like 3 games. But I'm saying all that to say it's hard. Now the NFC is hard. So the Saints will have to win the division or get to 10 wins to fight for. If they win the division, obviously they're in. They have to get 10 wins to be in contention for that 7th seed. Because what the potential roadblocks for the Saints, that's why that Giants game is important. The NFC East is a potential roadblock. You could have 3 teams out that division make the postseason. Dallas, Philly, and the Giants. It could be is the Saints in that category. The NFC North, all 4 teams in the North had winning records last year, and the Vikings got better by adding a Kyler Murray to an already the top 3 defense. Green Bay is always in the mix. Detroit is assumed to be better, and the Bears have, I think, the best collection of offensive talent. So the East and the North really worried me about, and then obviously the West. You got San Francisco and Seattle, and then the Rams. So that's why I said it's going to be hard, and if they get there, is well earned. So division first and foremost gets you in the dance. But if they can't win the division and they're going to get a 7th seed, they got to get 10 wins.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we were talking about when the schedule came out, is if things go really well, yeah, you could get to 10 wins, but it's the NFL. Everybody can win on any given day. So you never know how it's actually going to pan out. Emory, I don't know how often you get back to New Orleans, but when you do, where do you have to go eat?
Oh, that's a great question. I get back usually twice a year. Usually I'm down there for the Senior Bowl because
Mhm.
I fly into New Orleans, I spend a day, then I drive down to Mobile. And the last 4 years or 5 years, I was down there for the HBCU Legacy
HBCU,
Bowl,
yeah.
which now moves to Atlanta. So,
Mhm.
but when I get to New Orleans, the place I always go to is Mahoney's, the one on Magazine. That's my favorite po' boy spot. I go there, because it's ducked off. I sit in the corner, have my overstuffed shrimp po' boy, and pig out for a minute. That's the one spot I always go to. Outside of that, I tend to try to be a tourist in my own city. I'll go find different spots. I became a big fan of Revolution, a restaurant there.
Mhm.
Uh, that open face, I think is quail or gumbo, whatever. It was phenomenal. But I'm a foodie too, so I'm gonna eat. I go somewhere and I find all the like when we go to Indy for the combine.
Combine, yeah.
Best believe in November, all my reservations for February are already locked in. Like I am on it. But Mahoney's for the po' boys is where I always that's a must. Whether I get it on the front end or I get it on my last day before I fly out, that's it. That's where I go.
Yeah. I
hard
love
to
it.
hard to not eat in this city, man. A lot of good choices. And before we wrap, I actually do have one more for you. And thanks so much for your time. It was great to meet you. Like I said, I've seen a lot of your videos on social media. You do a great job breaking down the game on all levels. But you're clearly a very charismatic man, also. And I know you do a lot of motivational speaking. So on the way out, I just wanted you to tell me a little bit about that, what you do, where you do it, and maybe a piece of general motivation for Erin and I as we try to get through the doldrums of the rest of this NFL offseason.
It's funny because I started my career as a motivational speaker slash recruiter. They kind of run in the same. I was working in New Orleans at the time for a place called Bryman College, which was an allied health school. So my thing was, okay, I know little about allied health. I know my sister at the time was a phlebotomist, and my mom worked at a hospital. And so I had a familiarity with. I had a summer job too at Children's Hospital, working in the phlebotomy lab. Having to kind of calm kids down as they're getting their shots. Right. This was I was in high school. But outside of that, as a speaker, I was going to different high schools, talking about the benefit of education. If those that were interested, you can come over here, blah blah blah. But it was basically general about education and how it can really take you all places. And then it kind of morphed into all of the different things you kind of talk about life because it all runs the same. And so I love doing it. I still do it from time to time. When I'm able to find the time to in the schedule, which is usually around now, to go and do some different things. And I had a chance to go and speak to my Cajuns. That was cool in 2024. It had been 20 years that I had been back on campus, and
Wow.
it was crazy. That full circle moment. And then, as a bit of parting motivation, that I always live by the mantra of everything is temporary. No matter what you think about, as the biggest thing on your mind right now, 5 years from now, it would look like the tiniest thing. Everything is temporary, so you just got to keep on going. And that's been how I've been able to overcome all of the highs and lows in my life, just by thinking like, oh, even if it's a great feeling, it's like it's temporary. So stay level headed, stay on the same plane. And one of my favorite sayings that I use is, if you stay in that boat long enough, you'll hit land eventually, right? So you're gonna run into something. So just stay the course, stay in the water, and you're gonna find where you need to be.
Here's the hitting the
Yeah.
land, man. Thanks so much
Yeah.
for your time, Emory. This was a lot of fun, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes, sir. For Erin Summers and Emory Hunt, I am Mario Jerez saying don't forget to hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating, and write a review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. For Erin and Emory, I'm Mario saying talk to y'all soon. Who dat? This has been Bleav in Saints.